The champagne fountain glittered under chandelier light as my fingernails dug crescents into my palm. "Kylie, sweetheart." My stepmother Beverly's voice sliced through the wedding reception noise. "The photographer wants family only for these shots." She emphasized family while looking directly at me, her diamond bracelet catching light as she gestured toward the door. My throat constricted as blood rushed to my face, not from embarrassment, from rage. I'd spent 3 weeks organizing this reception, picked up the cake when the delivery canceled, even helped my cousin Rebecca into her wedding dress while Beverly sipped mimosas. And now, with 20 relatives watching, I was being erased again. "We wouldn't want to confuse people about who actually belongs," Beverly added with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. My father stood 5 feet away, pretending to adjust his cufflinks. The clicking of cameras slowed as guests turned to watch. Someone whispered, "Poor thing still doesn't get it." Another answered, "Always the outsider." Then came the vibration. My phone pulsed against my hip once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Our emergency signal. I slipped it from my pocket and saw the message from Thomas, Marcus's head of security who had been coordinating the final board approval. "It's done. Helicopter waiting. Northeast entrance. Now." My name is Olivia. I'm 31, and I built my own success while they weren't watching. This is the story of how I stepped out of the shadows and into the light they never thought I deserved. For 6 years, Beverly had methodically pushed me to the edges of my own family. First from holiday photos, then from dinners, finally from my childhood home after my mother died. "Your father needs to move on," she'd explained while watching me pack. "You remind him too much of her." Dad never contradicted her. The same man who taught me to ride a bike and promised to always protect me now averted his eyes whenever Beverly's perfectly manicured claws came out. I'd managed to build something from nothing after being forced out. Starting as a receptionist at Jensen Aeronautics, I worked 80-hour weeks, earned my MBA at night, and slowly gained the attention of Marcus Jensen himself. He became my mentor, teaching me everything about the industry while his health deteriorated. What no one knew, what I hadn't told any of them, was that Marcus had seen something in me that my own family missed. Leadership, vision, determination that bordered on relentless. When he was diagnosed with terminal cancer 6 months ago, he made a decision that would change everything. "You're the daughter I never had," he'd told me in his hospital room, oxygen mask temporarily moved aside. "You've earned this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I pushed these thoughts away and looked back at Beverly, who was now physically positioning family members for photos while pointedly ignoring me. "Not now," I whispered to myself, thumb hovering over my phone. I'd planned to wait until after the reception to be respectful of Rebecca's day. Then Beverly called over her shoulder, "Olivia, be a dear and tell the kitchen we need more ice." The dismissal was so casual, so practiced, delivered without even turning to face me. Something snapped. I texted back one word, "Coming." The phone felt heavy in my hand as I slipped it back into my pocket. The weight of decision, the moment everything would change. "Actually," I said, my voice stronger than I'd intended, "I need to step out." Beverly barely glanced at me. "Of course you do. Just hurry back with that ice." I smiled. Not the apologetic smile she was used to, but something different. Something that made her pause mid-instruction to the photographer. "I don't work for you," I said quietly. "I never did." The conversation around us dimmed. My father finally looked at me, confusion creasing his brow. "Olivia," he started, that familiar placating tone. "This isn't the time." "When is the time, Dad?" My voice remained steady. "When Beverly isn't around to hear it? When I'm not an inconvenience to the family narrative?" Beverly's smile tightened. "You're making a scene at your cousin's wedding. How predictable." The ballroom doors opened behind me, and a tall woman in a tailored charcoal suit entered. "Ms. Jensen," she called, her voice professional and crisp. "Your transportation is ready." Cameras flashed as heads turned toward the newcomer. "Jensen?" my father repeated, eyes narrowing. I smoothed my dress, a simple blue number Beverly had once called department store chic, and took a step backward. Marcus Jensen made me his successor 3 months ago. The board voted unanimously yesterday. The silence was absolute. Even the string quartet stopped playing. The company that supplies 80% of the aerospace technology for this country, I continued, my voice echoing slightly in the stunned quiet. The company whose stock your investment group has been trying to access for years. I looked directly at Beverly, whose face had lost its practiced composure. That company is now mine. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, the connections, the implications, the sudden recalibration of who I was in relation to her carefully constructed world. "You can't possibly," she started. "The press release goes out in 20 minutes, I interrupted. "I wanted family to know first." I emphasized the word exactly as she had moments before. My father stepped forward, his expression shifting from confusion to something like desperation. "Olivia, we should talk about this, as a family." "We're not a family," I replied, the truth of it settling like a weight being lifted. "We haven't been since you let her decide I wasn't worth defending." The woman in the suit cleared her throat discreetly. "Miss Jensen, the board is waiting." I nodded, turning away from the frozen tableau of relatives. As I reached the door, I looked back one final time. "Don't worry about the ice, Beverly. I think things just got plenty cold in here." As I walked with the woman in the suit toward the northeast exit, I could hear the whispers following me. Thomas was already waiting by the door, having arrived earlier to coordinate with the board's final approval remotely. The helicopter lifted off the country club's landing pad, wind whipping my hair as we ascended above the sprawling grounds. Below, I could see tiny figures spilling out onto the lawn, phones raised to capture the moment. Tomorrow's gossip becoming today's business headlines. Inside the main cabin, Thomas, Marcus's longtime head of security, handed me a tablet displaying a live feed of the Jensen Aeronautics boardroom. 12 executives seated around a mahogany table, waiting. "They've all been notified?" I asked, straightening my jacket. "Yes, ma'am. And the legal team has prepared statements for the press." I nodded, exhaling slowly. The countryside below gave way to city lights as we approached downtown. The Jensen Tower dominated the skyline, illuminated against the darkening sky. "Your father has called 3 times, Thomas added, his expression neutral. "I imagine he has." I set the tablet down. "Beverly's investment group has been trying to secure Jensen contracts for years. She married him after meeting him at an aerospace conference where Marcus rejected their proposal." Thomas raised an eyebrow but maintained his professional demeanor. "Miss Jensen—" "Olivia," I corrected. "Olivia," he amended with a slight smile. "Mr. Jensen was very confident in his decision. He said you were the only person who saw the company as more than a portfolio asset." The helicopter began its descent toward the rooftop landing pad of Jensen Tower. I could see figures waiting, silhouetted against the lights. "Did Marcus ever tell you why he chose me?" I asked. Thomas shook his head. "He said success without character is just luck waiting to run out." I smoothed my dress one final time. "And he was tired of watching people get lucky." The blade slowed as we touched down on the concrete helipad. A rush of evening air filled the cabin as the door slid open. Camera flashes greeted me like lightning. "Ready?" Thomas asked. I stepped out onto the pad, back straight, chin lifted. "I've been ready for 6 years." The elevator descended swiftly to the executive floor where 12 board members awaited my arrival. I took a deep breath, centering myself before the doors opened. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 12 faces turned toward me, some curious, some skeptical, a few openly hostile. At the head of the table stood Robert Vaughn, the CFO who'd worked alongside Marcus for 20 years. "Ms. Parker," he began, using my maiden name deliberately. "This is highly irregular." "Jensen," I corrected, setting my portfolio on the table. "Olivia Jensen. Marcus adopted me legally last month." The murmurs started immediately. Robert's face paled. "That's impossible. The board wasn't consulted." "The board doesn't need to approve personal decisions," I interrupted, removing documents from my portfolio. "But they did unanimously approve his succession plan yesterday. Your signature is third from the top, Mr. Vaughn." I slid the paper toward him, watching as he recognized his own signature on a document he clearly hadn't read carefully enough. "Marcus was very thorough," I continued, taking the seat at the head of the table. He understood how people tend to skim legal documents when they believe they already know what's in them. The mood in the room shifted perceptibly. Several board members leaned forward to examine their own copies of the agreement. "This is a $4.2 billion company," Robert sputtered. "You can't just—" "I didn't," I cut in. "Marcus did. And he spent 6 months preparing me for this role while you were busy trying to position yourself as his natural successor." The double doors opened again. My assistant Zoe entered with a tablet displaying a countdown clock. 0 hours, 3 minutes, and 42 seconds. "Press release goes live in under 4 minutes," she announced. "All major networks and financial outlets are standing by." Robert looked around the table, seeking allies. "We should postpone this announcement until legal can review—" "Legal has reviewed it," came a new voice. Marcus's attorney, David Harris, entered with another stack of documents. "Extensively. Ms. Jensen's position is ironclad." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as reality settled over the board members. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an announcement. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. My father, again. I declined it without looking away from Robert. "You have 2 choices," I said, my voice steady. "Work with me as Marcus intended or tender your resignation before the press release goes live," and I explain why. One by one, I met the eyes of each board member. Some nodded slightly. Others remained expressionless. Robert's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This company doesn't need a caretaker," I continued. "It needs a leader who understands what Marcus built and why it matters." I stood up, placing both hands on the table. "I'm that leader. Anyone who disagrees can leave now with their reputation intact." No one moved. The countdown on Zoe's tablet reached 0. Phones around the table began buzzing simultaneously as the announcement hit the wires. "Congratulations," David said quietly. "You've just become one of the most powerful women in aerospace." But I wasn't thinking about power. I was thinking about the girl who'd been told to get ice while family photos were taken, who'd been erased from holiday cards and dinner invitations, who'd worked reception while earning an MBA at night. The girl Beverly had once dismissed as not Jensen material. As the board meeting transitioned into strategy discussions, my phone lit up with message after message, friends, former colleagues, journalists, and a text from my cousin Rebecca. "I had no idea. I'm so sorry." She must have seen the press release that was now flooding social media and news sites, connecting the dots between my sudden departure and my new position. Hours later, after the board meeting concluded, I found myself alone in what was now my office, previously Marcus's sanctuary. Most employees had gone home, leaving the Jensen Tower nearly empty. I sat in Marcus's office, my office now, staring at the city lights below. His personal effects had been carefully packed away weeks ago, leaving the space ready for its new occupant. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Come in," I called. Thomas entered, holding a small wooden box. "Mr. Jensen wanted you to have this tonight. He said you'd understand when to open it." I took the box, feeling its weight. "Thank you, Thomas. You should go home." He nodded but hesitated at the door. "For what it's worth, he talked about you constantly in his final weeks, said you were the daughter he'd always wanted." After he left, I sat alone with the box in my lap. My finger traced the Jensen Aeronautics logo inlaid in the polished wood. With a deep breath, I opened it. Inside was a folded note and a small silver key. The note, written in Marcus's shaky hand, read, "The most valuable thing we build isn't made of metal or circuits. It's the legacy of doing what's right when no one's watching. Your mother would be proud. I certainly am. MJ." Beneath the note lay a framed photograph I'd never seen before. My mother in her early 20s, standing beside a much younger Marcus in front of an aircraft prototype, both smiling, both wearing engineer badges. My hands trembled as I realized what I was seeing. My mother had worked at Jensen before I was born, before she met my father. She and Marcus had been colleagues and close friends until she left the company to start a family. All these years, I'd thought he'd chosen me because of my work ethic, my determination. But he'd been watching over me long before I ever walked through his company's doors. The telephone on the desk rang, startling me. At this hour? Olivia Jensen, I answered, still staring at the photograph. Olivia. My father's voice, rough with emotion. We need to talk. I closed the wooden box gently. It's midnight, Dad. Beverly didn't know, he said quickly, about your mother's connection to Marcus. None of us did. A cold clarity washed over me. You didn't call to congratulate me, did you? You called because Beverly's investment group is panicking. His silence confirmed it. Did you ever wonder why I stopped asking for your help? I asked quietly. It wasn't pride. It was because I realized you couldn't give what you didn't have. That's not fair, he protested weakly. Neither was teaching me that I should accept being invisible in my own family. The city pulsed below, millions of lights in the darkness, some dim, some brilliant, each with its own story. I have an early meeting tomorrow, I said finally. Board members to convince, strategies to implement, a company to run. Olivia, please. Goodbye, Dad. I placed the receiver back in its cradle, the soft click echoing in the quiet office. On my desk, my new business cards gleamed under the lamplight. Olivia Jensen, Chief Executive Officer. Not invisible anymore, not by a long shot. 3 weeks later, the company hangar had been transformed for the presentation. I stood at the podium in the Jensen Aeronautics main hangar. Hundreds of employees gathered before me. Behind me stood the company's newest prototype, still hidden under a massive cloth cover. For 30 years, I began, my voice carrying through the speakers. Jensen Aeronautics has been at the forefront of innovation. Today, we take another step forward. In the front row, I could see Marcus's widow, Claire, smiling encouragingly. Beside her sat members of the board who had quickly learned I was nothing like the pushover they'd expected. But before we reveal our next chapter, I continued, I want to acknowledge the foundation upon which we build. At my signal, the large screen behind me illuminated with a photograph, Marcus and my mother, the same one from the wooden box, now enlarged for all to see. Some of you may recognize Elena Parker, one of Jensen's earliest engineers. Her work on navigation systems helped build the company's reputation for excellence. I paused, looking out at the curious faces. She was also my mother. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus Jensen understood something fundamental about success, I continued. It isn't measured in dollars or stock prices. It's measured in impact and integrity. The hangar doors opened at the back, letting in streams of morning light, and with them came an unexpected figure, my father standing hesitantly at the threshold. Our eyes met briefly across the distance. I gave him a small nod before continuing. Today, we honor Marcus's legacy by unveiling the Elena Parker Memorial Scholarship, a full-ride program for young women entering aerospace engineering. Applause erupted, especially from the female engineers present. As the presentation continued and the new prototype was revealed, I found myself thinking not about revenge or vindication, but about circles completing themselves, about stories finding their proper endings. Beverly had sent a formal letter requesting a meeting to discuss family matters. I'd had Zoe send a polite but firm decline. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Our relationship had permanently ended the day I left that wedding. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave the office, my father was waiting in the lobby. I won't take much of your time, he said, standing as I approached. He looked older somehow, diminished without Beverly beside him, orchestrating his responses. What do you want, Dad? He held out a small velvet pouch. This was your mother's. I should have given it to you years ago. Inside was her engineering pin from Jensen Aeronautics, slightly tarnished with age. She would have been so proud, he said, his voice breaking. I should have been too. I'm sorry, Olivia. I closed my hand around the pin, feeling its edges press into my palm. Thank you for coming today, I said finally. Beverly and I are separating, he added quietly. The divorce papers are being drawn up. The wedding, seeing you like that, it made me realize what I've become. I didn't respond immediately. The lobby fountain filled the silence between us. I hope you find your way back to yourself, I said eventually. He nodded, understanding this wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. an acknowledgement, a beginning, perhaps. As he turned to leave, I called after him. "Dad?" He looked back, hope flashing across his face. "Mom's scholarship program is having a launch event next month. If you'd like to attend, I can have Zoe send you the details." His smile was small but genuine. I'd like that. That night, I stood on the rooftop helipad of Jensen Tower, the city spread out before me like a constellation. The wind whipped around me, carrying away the last echoes of that wedding reception, where I'd been told once again that I didn't belong. I touched the engineering pin now fastened to my lapel, my mother's legacy, Marcus's faith, my own determination, all of it coming together to create something neither Beverly nor anyone else could diminish or erase. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation of my space, my story, my name. In the distance, a helicopter's lights blinked against the night sky, heading toward the tower. Tomorrow's meetings, tomorrow's challenges. I smiled, breathing in the height and possibility of it all. The invisible girl was gone. In her place stood Olivia Jensen, seen, heard, and impossible to ignore. As for my cousin Rebecca, I sent her a text the next morning. "Thank you for reaching out. I know it wasn't your fault. Coffee next week?" Her reply came immediately. "Yes, please, I've missed you. Some family ties were worth preserving after all. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one." The belt cracked across my back like lightning, sending shockwaves through my body. I staggered but didn't fall. My father's face twisted with rage as he raised his arm again, the leather whistling through the air before connecting with my shoulder. Pain exploded through my nerves, but I bit my lip until I tasted blood, refusing to give him the satisfaction of my tears. "You've forgotten your place," he snarled, bringing the belt down a third time. My brother Logan sprawled on the couch, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. My mother stood with her arms crossed, nodding slightly as if my father's violence was necessary medicine. They weren't horrified. They were satisfied. In that moment, something crystallized inside me. The belt had left welts, but it hadn't broken me. Instead, it had shattered the last chain that kept me tethered to this house, to these people who saw me not as a daughter, but as an appliance with my name on it. My name is Olivia Russell. I'm 17, and I've been my family's invisible foundation. This is the story of how I dismantled everything they built on my back. "I'm not your servant," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the living room. No tears, no screaming, just footsteps padding softly up the stairs while 3 pairs of eyes burned into my back. For most of my life, I'd been my family's shadow. Logan never lifted a finger. If he spilled soda on the couch, I cleaned it. If he needed his uniform ironed at midnight, I stayed up. If he failed a test, I was scolded for not helping him study. I wasn't his sister. I was his staff. "You're the girl. Girls keep the house running," my mom once said, folding her arms like she'd just quoted scripture. I used to think if I worked harder, they'd see me, that maybe one day I'd be something more than a name on a chore list. But no matter what I did, Logan was always the son, and I was a means to serve him. My father ran the house like a general. No warmth, just orders. He believed discipline made strength, and obedience was respect. Whenever I questioned something, he'd look at me like I'd betrayed the family name. "You're not here to argue, Olivia," he'd say. "You're here to contribute." That word contribute became a leash. It didn't mean be part of this family. It meant shut up and work harder. Still, I did it all. I made their beds. I folded their laundry. I memorized grocery lists, ironed pleats, soaked blood out of Logan's soccer uniforms when he got into fights. He never said thank you. He just tossed more clothes on the floor. There were phrases in my house that echoed louder than footsteps. They didn't scream them. They didn't need to. They just let the words settle like dust in the lungs. Be useful, know your place. He's a boy. You'll understand when you're older. I understood now. Not because I'd aged, but because I'd seen the pattern. It wasn't about gender. It was about control, about shaping me into something that made their lives easier, quieter. Every time I stood up for myself, they'd flip the script. Don't be dramatic. You're just trying to start trouble. No one will ever put up with that attitude in the real world. They didn't raise me to be loved. They raised me to be palatable, to be a girl who smiled through chores, folded emotions like towels, and accepted orders like oxygen. But while they hurled commands, I started keeping score. At first, it was small. I wrote down every task I did in a notebook I hid in the lining of my backpack. Grocery lists, Logan's laundry cycles, the exact time I had to set my alarm so Dad's coffee would be ready by 6 a.m. Then I added more. Times I was blamed for Logan's mess. Times I ate leftovers while he got the hot meal. Times I was told to be quiet when I cried. It wasn't just a list. It was a record, a ledger, a system of unpaid labor and emotional taxation. And the more I wrote, the more I realized how much of my life had been stripped down to transactions. Affection was conditional. Praise was rare. But expectation, that was infinite. You're lucky we don't charge you rent. You think anyone else would tolerate your mouth? We feed you. That's love. But it wasn't love. Love doesn't come with receipts. The day they called a family meeting, I already knew it wasn't about unity. Family meetings in our house weren't conversations. They were courtrooms, and I was always on trial. That night, I walked into the living room and saw the three of them already seated. Dad in his recliner, Logan sprawled across the couch like royalty, and Mom standing with her arms crossed like she'd rehearsed this. "Sit," Dad said. I didn't. I stood. "You haven't been doing your part," Mom began, tilting her head like she was disappointed in a pet, not a person. "He says his laundry hasn't been folded. His bathroom's a mess. You've been slacking." I blinked. "He's 17. He can fold his own damn shirts." Dad's hand twitched. Logan smirked. Mom's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone," she snapped. "He's a boy. He deserves better than this." I looked around the room and realized they genuinely believed that. It wasn't performance. It was doctrine. "He deserves clean clothes," she added. "He deserves peace in his home." "And I don't?" I said quietly. "I cook, I clean, I do everything, and it's never enough, is it?" "You're a girl," Dad said coldly. "You were raised to serve. That's how the world works." "No," I said. "That's how your world works. I'm not doing his laundry anymore, or his chores, or yours." That's when he stood, and when my body instinctively took a step back, I knew what was coming. "Do his laundry or get out," he roared. When I didn't move, he did. He lunged, not with warning, not with restraint. The belt wasn't even hidden this time. It was on the table, waiting like it had been invited. He grabbed it, looped it once around his fist, and swung. After the third strike, I walked out. No suitcase, no tears, no goodbye, just one last look at the three people who had spent my whole life telling me to be useful, and who would finally understand what it meant to lose the one person who kept their house breathing. I didn't pack. I didn't take my clothes or my school books or even the tiny stack of birthday cards I'd hidden under my mattress. The ones with half-hearted messages like, "Make us proud, Olivia." I just left. A hoodie, a charger, my phone, and a notebook zipped inside my backpack. That was it. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't even look back. I wanted the silence to be the loudest thing they heard. I walked 2 miles to Jasmine's place, my best friend since 6th grade. Her porch light was still on. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask what happened. She just stepped aside and said, "Come in." That first night, I slept on a yoga mat with a bunched-up hoodie for a pillow. It was hard, cold. My ribs ached. My arm throbbed. But for the first time in my life, no one expected anything from me. No one asked for dinner. No one demanded silence or servitude. The next morning, Jasmine's mom made pancakes, real ones with syrup and laughter in the kitchen. I sat at the table like I didn't belong. "You okay staying a few days?" she asked gently. I nodded. She glanced at my arm. "More than a few?" Then they gave me a blanket, cleared out a corner of the storage room, put down a mattress, a secondhand dresser. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. In those quiet days, I waited for something. A text, a call, a threat, some recognition that I had left, that I had mattered enough to chase. But none came. My phone stayed silent. No, "Are you safe?" No, "Come back." Just silence. The same kind they always forced on me. But this time, the silence wasn't theirs. It was mine. And I was about to weaponize it. It started with a list, not for revenge, not yet, just to remember. I opened my notebook and titled the page, "Things I Did Before They Said I Wasn't Enough." I wrote fast at first, the obvious ones. Cooked 3 meals a day, cleaned Logan's bathroom, ironed school uniforms, grocery runs, packed lunches. Then came the deeper ones. Hid my own report card so Logan's wouldn't look bad. Took the blame when he broke Mom's blender. Stayed up to reheat dinner when Dad worked late, even when I had exams. Apologized for things I didn't do. It didn't stop. The list kept growing. 10 pages, then 15, then more. It wasn't just a record. It was a ledger. And every entry whispered one truth. They owed me. Not in money, in respect, in care, in acknowledgement, and they would never pay it. That's when the shift happened. I stopped asking why they hadn't called. I stopped waiting for their guilt to kick in. Instead, I began preparing. I started by filing for financial independence. With Jasmine's mom as a witness, I submitted paperwork to revoke their access to my school records, my health files, anything they might try to control later. I already had my own bank account they didn't know about. I'd been saving the small amounts I earned from babysitting the neighbors' kids for years. I got a new debit card under my name, transferred my student savings, locked my phone carrier so they couldn't suspend my line. Thankfully, my phone was already in my name since I'd bought it myself with those savings last year. Then I photographed the bruises. Not for the police, not yet, just to have. I wasn't planning a scandal. I wasn't writing an expose. I didn't want drama. I wanted clarity. I wanted the next time they looked around their home and wondered why everything felt heavier, colder, quieter. They'd remember me. Not in anger, not in guilt, in absence. Because I wasn't the daughter they lost. I was the air they forgot they were breathing. And now they'd have to learn how to suffocate without me. 3 weeks passed. Still no call. Still no text. Just a growing silence that was no longer empty. It was electric. Then one morning, while helping Jasmine's mom carry groceries to the porch, I heard the first crack. "Ran into your mom at the store," she said casually. She looked worn out, couldn't lift a gallon of milk without wincing. She asked the clerk for help bagging, said her back was out, but she looked more overwhelmed than hurt. I nodded, barely. That night, I opened my notebook again, flipped to a fresh page, titled it, "What They Lose Without Me." The next day, Jasmine's cousin Taylor, who lived 2 blocks from my old house, sent a picture. Logan outside the laundromat, his clothes stuffed in a trash bag. He looked confused and furious. A week later, Jasmine's mom mentioned what she'd heard from her coworker who worked at the same company as my father. My father had shown up late to work 3 days in a row. The coworker told her he'd started snapping at clients. Rumor was HR had written him up after he blew up in a staff meeting. And then came the message. My phone buzzed, a number I hadn't blocked because I didn't need to. "Mom, Logan has an awards dinner this Friday. None of his suits are ironed. You need to stop being ridiculous and come home. No greeting, no apology, just a demand dressed as an invitation." I didn't answer. 4 days later, another text. "Dad, this is childish. No one will tolerate your behavior in the real world. Come home, apologize, and we'll let you earn your place again." "Let me earn it." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. I took screenshots, not for evidence, for myself, as a reminder. This is who they are. By then, I'd enrolled in a local community college nursing program with Jasmine's mom's help. Since I was still a minor, she helped me apply for special circumstances admission, explaining my situation to the administration. I'd filed for legal emancipation, which was still in process, but allowed me to enroll with Jasmine's mom as my temporary guardian. I lived full-time in the spare room at Jasmine's, helped with dinner, took the bus, studied late. It was hard, but it was real and mine. Meanwhile, back at the Russell house, the systems I used to uphold were buckling. Neighbors began whispering. Logan started skipping school. One teacher emailed the house twice. No reply. My mom asked the church for help with meals, claiming a mobility issue, and yet they still pretended I was just away. "They're telling people you left for an internship," Jasmine said one night, "that you're pursuing maturity." Maturity. Funny how they only praised it when it suited their lie. I didn't correct anyone. I just kept building my life. Then I packed a box. Inside it, all the handwritten chore lists they used to stick to the fridge. The birthday card where Mom wrote, "We didn't plan for you, but God has a purpose." The broken locket she gave me at 13 with the words, "So you remember we didn't have to keep you." And finally, the ledger. I printed it. 52 pages, bound it, labeled the front, "Unpaid labor, years 10 to 17. I taped the box shut. No note, just an address label, no return. I took the bus to my old neighborhood early one morning and left the box on their doorstep at dawn. 2 days later, Taylor texted. "They didn't come out for hours. Then your dad opened the box." He looked pale. Good, because I wasn't loud. I wasn't violent. But I was exact. I'd taken everything they once demanded, my labor, my silence, my usefulness, and returned it in the form they feared most: documentation, proof. Proof they never expected me to collect. Proof of what happens when the backbone of the household walks out and doesn't come back. No headlines, no scandal, just silence sharpened into truth. 3 months later, I found myself at the coffee shop across from Logan's school. I hadn't planned the meeting, but there he was, slumped at a corner table, scrolling through his phone. I was in the area to pick up textbooks from the college bookstore nearby. He looked different, thinner, his clothes wrinkled in a way they never would have been when I lived at home. I ordered my coffee and sat down across from him without asking. His head snapped up, eyes widening. "Olivia?" His voice cracked a little. For a moment, he looked like the little kid who used to follow me around before Dad taught him I was beneath him. "Hey, Logan." I kept my voice neutral. He glanced around nervously. "Are you coming back?" "No." The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. "Dad had to hire a cleaning service," he finally said. "They quit after 2 weeks. Said he was impossible." I took a sip of my coffee. Sounds like Dad. "Mom's back is getting worse. The doctor says it's stress-related." I nodded, waiting. I dot. He looked down at his hands. I had to learn how to do laundry, had to YouTube how to iron a shirt. A bitter laugh escaped him. "Failed twice. Burned a hole right through my dress shirt." I didn't respond with sympathy. I just watched him. This boy who had been taught that my purpose was to serve him. "They're saying you abandoned us," he mumbled, "that you're selfish." "And what do you say?" I asked, my voice steady. His eyes met mine, then quickly darted away. "I don't know. It's just, everything's harder now." "Yes," I said simply. "It is." "Is that why you did this? To make things harder?" I set my cup down carefully. "I didn't make anything harder, Logan. I just stopped making it easier. There's a difference." He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time. "They won't ever admit they were wrong." I know. But they were, weren't they? It wasn't really a question. I stood up, gathering my things. "My therapist says I don't need to hear you say it, but maybe you need to hear yourself say it." I left him there, staring at his reflection in the dark screen of his phone. We haven't spoken since that day, though occasionally I'll see him around campus. He nods, I nod back, but that's the extent of our relationship now. By my 18th birthday, my emancipation was finalized. The court reviewed my documentation of abuse and granted my petition without requiring my parents to appear. My therapist, whom I'd been seeing through a community youth program, provided a supporting statement that helped seal the decision. I was legally free. I moved into a studio apartment 2 blocks from campus. It was small, 1 window, a creaky floor, a shower that ran either scalding or freezing. But every inch of it was mine. I qualified for subsidized housing for students, which made the rent manageable. I worked part-time at a local bookstore, studied at night, took nursing classes during the day, packed my own meals, folded my own laundry. 2 loads a week, quiet, peaceful. Every Friday, I lit a candle. Not for healing, not for memory, just because I could. No one barked orders. No one slammed doors. No one looked at me like I owed them something just for existing. And still, the world didn't collapse. I didn't fall apart. I didn't come crawling home. I thrived. Meanwhile, updates trickled in, not because I asked, but because the world is small and pain leaves echoes. A girl from church messaged me on social media. Your dad had a health scare in the grocery store. They say it was stress. Jasmine's cousin saw Logan at a job fair, angry, disheveled, yelling at a volunteer because his resume got wrinkled. My mom had joined an online support group called Parents of Ungrateful Children. She posted threads titled, "When They Forget Who Fed Them." One of my former classmates who followed her saw the posts and sent me screenshots asking if I was okay. They hadn't changed. They had just collapsed inward, angry at the vacuum I left behind but never brave enough to name it. And I no longer needed their shame to define me. I no longer needed their absence to hurt, because I had learned something they never taught me. Peace is louder than pain if you stay quiet long enough to hear it. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, 6 months after I'd left, the doorbell to my apartment rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My address was only known to a small circle of trusted friends, including Jasmine and her family. When I opened the door, my mother stood there, looking smaller than I remembered. "Olivia?" Her voice was tight, controlled. I didn't invite her in. "Mom." "You've lost weight," she said, her eyes scanning me up and down. "I've gained perspective." She clutched her purse strap tighter. "Your father wanted me to tell you that the door is open if you want to come back. On his terms, of course." "His terms," I repeated. "You'd need to apologize for the box, for the disruption, for leaving." I leaned against the door frame. "Is that why you're here? To negotiate my return?" She looked past me into my apartment, the small, tidy space I'd built for myself. "We're family, Olivia. Family forgives. Family doesn't require servitude as the price of belonging." Her expression hardened. "You always were dramatic." "No," I said quietly. "I was convenient, and now I'm not." "He hurt you once," she said, her voice dropping. "Once, after years of providing for you." I felt something cold slide down my spine. "Once was enough, and you watched, you approved." "I didn't." "You did, with your silence, with your crossed arms, with 'he deserves better.'" She looked away. "The house is falling apart without you." "That's because it was built on my back." Rain pattered against the walkway outside. My mother stood there, halfway between leaving and staying, just as she had been my entire life. "Tell Dad I got his message," I finally said, "and I decline his terms. And if you're wondering how you found me, Jasmine's mom told me you followed her from the grocery store last week. Don't come back." I closed the door gently. Not a slam, just a quiet click that felt more final than any shouting match could have been. They say revenge hurts others, but mine wasn't like that. Mine was cold, controlled, clean. I never screamed at them online, never aired my story in public, never knocked on the door to say, "Look what you lost," because I didn't need to. Every dish I wash now is mine. Every shirt I fold is for me. Every sunrise I wake up to feels like a quiet protest they'll never hear and still can't silence. Sometimes I wonder if the house still smells like bleach and frustration, if they still print out to-do lists and tape them to an empty fridge, if Logan ever figured out that microwaves don't load themselves, if my mom ever stops flinching when someone says my name, if my dad ever looks at his belt and remembers that it wasn't obedience he used against me, it was resolve. The last time I passed the old neighborhood, I didn't slow down. I didn't glance at the porch where I once left that box. I just kept walking. Keys in my pocket, grocery list in my hand. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. They taught me to serve, so I let them collapse without me. They trained me to be silent, so I made my silence the sentence they now serve. They called me worthless, and I gave them exactly that. Nothing. Not a scream, not a plea, not a single moment of my new life. I didn't tear their house down. I just took the warmth with me. And now, when they sit in the cold silence of what used to be control, they'll finally understand what I was worth. Because true freedom isn't what they expect. Sometimes it's the echo of footsteps walking away and never coming back. As I completed my first year of nursing school with honors, I realized that I'd found something they never gave me, a future built by my own hands.